Welcome to this explainer. So today, we're going to unpack a really fascinating quirk of language that exposes a massive flaw in how we design human organizations. But before we jump in, I want you to picture your own workplace for a second. Think about a time you stood out on the hallway, kind of shifting your weight, staring at your boss's open door, trying to decide if they looked just a little too busy to interrupt. We've all been there, right? Well, have you ever noticed how the very phrases we use to supposedly make work better might actually be sabotaging the exact environment we're trying to create? Today, we're analyzing a brilliant observation regarding two seemingly simple concepts, the open door and the sliding window.
Okay, let's dive right into this quirky linguistic paradox by looking at how differently we structure metaphors for people versus machines. On the surface, both of these terms describe a portal, right? A way to let things pass through. But how we apply these terms reveals something super deep about human psychology and systems design. And it leads us to a genuine mystery that we are going to solve together today. Why does an open door supposedly work so well for a manager, but would absolutely 100% crash a computer server?
Section 1. Two very different metaphors.
To understand the problem here, we first need to look at two totally different worlds, the architectural and the algorithmic. We use these spatial concepts to govern completely different types of flow. On one side, we have the open door. This is a highly emotional spatial metaphor used almost exclusively in business. It focuses heavily on removing social barriers in human relationships, and corporate culture just loves this metaphor because, it feels warm and egalitarian. But on the exact opposite side, we have the sliding window protocol. This is a highly technical, mathematical, and temporal concept used in networking like TCP. It focuses entirely on managing resource constraints and data flow.
Let's start with the human side of things. The traditional open door policy is designed to sound incredibly welcoming. It implies transparency, accessibility, and a total lack of intimidation. The literal architectural metaphor here is that a closed door means secrecy or a rigid, unapproachable hierarchy. So leaving a door open sends a really clear signal. Hey, there's no friction between you, the employee, and me, the manager. You can walk right in. Now, we can probably all agree that while this sounds fantastic in a company handbook, it rarely feels that frictionless in actual practice.
Now, on the technical side, the sliding window is completely robotic and highly efficient. Think of it kind of like reading a densely packed book using a magnifying glass that only reveals one single sentence at a time. The message here is, we have infinite data but finite memory and bandwidth. Therefore, let's isolate a specific, moving subset of data. The system only processes exactly what is inside that tiny boundary at any given millisecond. It ensures maximum focus on what matters right now, completely governing efficiency.
Section 2. What if we swapped? Okay, let's try a fun thought experiment. What happens if we crash these two models into each other? First up, what if a computer server had an open door policy? Just imagine a network protocol deciding to be completely welcoming and accessible to all incoming information, happily throwing away its sliding window boundaries.
If a network protocol accepted every single packet all at once without any flow control, it would be literal digital pandemonium. The server would instantly choke, stutter, and crash from an overwhelming overflow of data. We inherently understand that machines desperately need boundaries to survive infinite inputs. They need them to stay focused and avoid total collapse.
But what if we flip it the other way? What if a manager used a sliding window policy? Imagine if your boss sat you down and told you they were implementing a strict sliding window approach to human resources and team management.
It would basically mean your boss only cares about you during a strict 15-minute slot. They're processing only what is inside that highly specific mathematical frame. And as time moves forward, yesterday's problems drop entirely out of their buffer, completely forgotten. Think about how dehumanizing that feels, right? Having a manager treat a complex human problem like a cleared cache. While this might actually describe some really rigid corporate environments out there, dropping employee issues out of the buffer creates terrible morale. So at first glance, this thought experiment seems to prove the golden rule. Humans need doors to feel welcome, while machines need windows to stay focused.
Section 3. The tyranny of the open door.
But hold on a second. When you actually look at the open door through the lens of psychological safety and stress management, the standard corporate interpretation completely falls apart. Welcome to the tyranny of the open door. You see, the standard policy is rooted in this old-school top-down view of accessibility. It wrongly assumes that physical proximity automatically equals comfort. In reality, it requires immense activation energy for an employee. You aren't just casually strolling into a room, you're crossing a literal threshold into a space of higher authority. It's that awful feeling of pacing in the hallway, trying to read the room before you step inside. Let's break down exactly why this is such a terrible model for human relations. For the employee, walking into that room feels highly exposing. It creates an internal monologue that's just filled with hesitation and anxiety. You are burdened with the constant worry of, am I interrupting? Or is this a bad time? Or do they look too focused right now? The open door doesn't actually remove the friction of communication, it just outsources all of that friction onto the shoulders of the person with less power. And look, the manager doesn't fare any better here. For the manager, someone constantly walking in creates completely unpredictable interruptions. In cognitive science, we know for a fact that context switching absolutely destroys what we call deep work. I mean, think about it. A tiny 15-second interruption can literally require 20 minutes of recovery time just for a manager's brain to get back on track. The manager is continuously forced into a reactive state, which actively drives up cortisol levels. So the open door policy turns out to be incredibly stressful for literally everyone involved. So why is it so incredibly popular? Well, it became a widespread buzzword because it was intended as a signal of approachability. It's essentially an internal PR move, a well-intentioned but heavily flawed management theory designed to say, look, we aren't tyrants. It signals approachability on paper, even though the actual practical execution of the policy functions as a massive occupational hazard.
We really have to rethink the door entirely. A closed door shouldn't automatically mean secrecy. It actually signifies safety. Let that counterintuitive takeaway really sink in for a second. A closed door establishes a much-needed boundary, and without boundaries in the workplace, true psychological safety simply cannot exist. Employees and managers both need safe spaces to focus and process without the constant looming threat of an unpredictable intrusion.
Section 4. The Zen of the Open Window.
This realization brings us to a completely new paradigm. We need to turn the metaphor inside out to find a healthier model for human interaction. A literal window, when open on a nice day, does something truly magical. It allows for the exchange of essential resources, like fresh air, natural light, and a broader perspective, without requiring any physical intrusion into the space. Think about the sensory relief of opening a window in a stuffy room. The temperature drops, the air is replenished, and stress levels instantly go down. And the best part? Nobody had to cross a threshold or interrupt a deep thought process to make it happen. It's the perfect metaphor for cognitive relief. If we translate this beautiful architectural concept into an actual management philosophy, an open window policy, we get three massive benefits. First, it filters the environment, letting fresh ideas and feedback in while keeping constant disruptive bugs out. This naturally leads to the second benefit, maintaining boundaries. It allows managers and teams to see each other safely, fostering connection without confrontation. For example, an open window policy in practice might look like utilizing asynchronous communication, or maybe setting dedicated, predictable office hours. Because finally, it replenishes the room. Just like a protocol manages data flow to stop a server crash, an open window intelligently manages emotional flow to prevent human burnout.
Ultimately, the difference really comes down to this. The open door demands an action. It forces physical and psychological friction because someone bravely has to cross it, interrupting whatever is happening on the other side. The open window, on the other hand, demands absolutely nothing. It effortlessly changes the atmosphere of the room, improving the environment for everyone, naturally, passively, and safely.
Section 5. Time to just breathe. It is clearly time for modern workplaces to rethink how we communicate, how we design our organizational metaphors, and ultimately how we manage stress. Here is the ultimate shift we need to make right now. We need to stop telling people, my door is always open, because what that really translates to is, come break my focus or risk an awkward encounter. Instead, leaders should focus on opening windows. They need to actively create the psychological space that lets in fresh perspectives and allows everyone, managers and employees alike, enough safety to simply breathe and thrive in their work. Since the open door clearly creates the very stress and anxiety it was originally trying to prevent, it leaves us with one incredibly important, provocative question to consider as we close out this explainer. If the open door is actually a trap, what other comforting corporate buzzwords are secretly destroying your team's sanity? Keep questioning the defaults, keep looking for better models, and I will see you in the next explainer.